CCP lessons learned from the audit. The audit is 2023. My name is Michelle Carpenter. I'm a registered nurse and nursing consultant for policy and practice here at the college. And with me is my colleague, Kelly Kane. She is also a registered nurse and the newest nursing consultant for policy and practice. And she started with us in early September. And as you're aware, the CCP audit for the 2022-2023 licensure year is underway. And we are taking a look at all of the submissions. The college recognizes that challenges occurs when using a new program and a new digital online format. So we recognize that people had to start using a new program and using MyCCP under MyCRNNL. Therefore, this year, to address the challenges noted, we are using this first year using the new program and the new digital format, the online CCP Portal, as a learning year. And we are providing an education session today, CCP Lessons Learned from the Audit, and that we'll record this education event so you can access it at a later date so that you can review the learnings that you achieved from today. So for those of you who are here today, you may have received an audit results email requesting that you attend this event or watch the recorded session that will be posted on our website so that you and all of the RNs and NPs can benefit from the lessons learned and refresh our memories on the CCP requirements for this upcoming year. So we'll provide you with some examples of where people did not meet the CCP requirements. They met the requirements but needed some improvements, and we can use this valuable learning as we move forward with capturing your CCP and my learning in Alinity. So we're going to review some of the findings that we have from the audit thus far. We also appreciate that you may have already logged some of your learning, but by attending this event, you will gain valuable knowledge of the CCP requirements and required corrections that can be made for this current year so that you can successfully proceed to licensure renewal and be prepared to meet the requirements for the 2024 CCP audit. So today, we're going to look at several things. We're going to review the 6 steps of CCP. We're going to focus on the steps 3 to 5 that are required for licensure renewal. Then we're going to review lessons learned from the 2023 CCP audit that was taken from the online CCP portal that was available in MyCCP under MyCRNNL for the licensure year, April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. And finally, we will provide some reminders regarding areas for improvement and tips for success to help you meet the CCP requirements for this year's licensure renewal and for the next CCP audit. So, as a reminder, this diagram depicts the 6 steps in the CCP program. And steps 1 and 2, conduct your self-assessment, identify your learning needs, are informal and reflective exercises. You do not need to record these anywhere, but you can, if you wish, in the CCP guide in Appendix A, we have a text box there, or you can write them down on a piece of paper, whatever you feel. We've also put in the chat the link to the CCP guide. We are going to review the other steps as we progress in this presentation. So we're going to jump ahead to step 6. This is the last step in the CCP program. And all RNs and NPs must complete CCP annually. In addition, each year, as part of the legislative requirement, the college conducts a CCP audit. And as you're aware, the information submitted into MyCCP formed the basis for the content of the 2023 CCP audit, which were recorded online in MyCCP log under MyCRNNL. This upcoming 2024 CCP audit, however, your entries will be logged in Alinity under My Learning and automatically available for the next audit. Inclusion in the CCP audit occurs automatically of registrant entries and may occur at any time during the licensure year. So as you're aware, we have been conducting the CCP entries and reviewing them in the audit since May. This year, you'll be reviewing all entries. We will be reviewing all entries. And after the audit is completed, you will receive notification on the outcomes of the audit via email. And there are no exceptions for the audit. And you may have already received an email, but for those who have not, rest assured, don't worry, you'll get an email as well. So moving forward, and since January 2024, July 24, 2023, the college has a new database called Alinity. You may be already logging your learning and activities in My Learning in Alinity. While the database looks different from My CCP and My CRNNL, the logging of learning activities and CCP requirements, step 3 to 5, are exactly the same, except they're now captured in My Learning in Alinity. So we have conducted about 2,000 audits thus far, and NPs and RNs were sent one of 3 emails. You met CCP requirements, you met with areas of improvement, and that was the impact statement or the summative evaluation needed improvement. That was some examples. Or you did not meet, and there were areas for improvement. And some examples were that the licensure year was incorrect. This audit required that the learning occur between April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. We also had duplication of activities, impact statements that were one-word sentences. We had insufficient hours, and people put in more than the prep work for preceptorship. Now, I'm going to give you more examples of where things were not entered correctly or needs improvement. So we'll cover all of this in the presentation. And all RNs and NPs in those letters were encouraged to attend today's event or to listen to the recorded event under archived events or under the CCP audit. So, as I said, we have audited about 2,000 logs, and you will receive an email if you've not already done so in the near future. So we will continue to log CCP, audit CCP logs, so you will receive a letter in the future. You do not need to connect to the college, as we do not provide individual results. And this is a learning year. So the purpose of this presentation and providing access to the recording is to provide valuable information that will allow you to go back and review what you logged in My Learning in Alinity and make any corrections so that you can meet the CCP requirements for licensure year and to meet requirements for next year's audit. And remember that this is a learning year, so don't worry. You don't need to have any action. You don't need to submit anything further. You can just listen to some of the tips that we give today and go back and look at the learning that you put in My Learning in Alinity and make any necessary changes, because you want to meet the requirements for the 2024 audit. And the 2024 audit will look at learning that occurred April 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. But this audit that I'm talking about today was learning that occurred between April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. And for more information on this, I will direct you to our continuing competency page and our continuing competency guideline, which is a valuable resource to help you log those learning activities. So just to give you a little background at what we were looking for in the audit. So we were looking to see that learning fell within the licensure year, April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. We were also looking that there was complete sentences, not one-word or two-word sentences. We were looking to ensure that there wasn't any duplication of learning activities unless there was additional learning achieved. We were looking to ensure that there was no duplication or gibberish in the learning impact or in the description of the learning activity. We were also looking to ensure that the learning impact indicated what new knowledge or competencies were gained and how it immediately impacted your learning practice. So how were you now going to use the new knowledge or new competencies that you gained? And we were also looking to see that the learning activities were related to your professional practice in your practice setting. In the summative evaluation, we look to see how the overall impact of the 24 hours of learning that you had on your practice. So we were looking to see that you indicated how your practice changed or was different, you know, by that summative evaluation. So we wanted that description of how your practice was impacted. So now we're going to look briefly at the steps that are required for licensure renewal, and those are steps 3 to 5. Which is what we look for when we're evaluating and conducting the audit, how you completed steps 3 to 5. So in step 3, you complete and evaluate learning activities. Step 4 is that you record 24 hours of learning in My Learning in Alinity. And in this audit, the 2023, we were looking at your learning in My CCP. So we went into that online digital portal that we have for CCP, and we looked at the learning that was captured in My CCP. And just some tips or reminders of what was required in steps 3 to 4. So one of the requirements is that you need to complete 24 hours of learning activities. And that's on average 2 hours of learning per month, but that's certainly not the rule of thumb that you have to stick with. You can do all of your 24 hours of learning in the first couple of months of the licensure year, April 1, 2022 to March 31st, or you could have spread it out throughout the year. And after completing a learning activity, you had to think about the immediate impact that that had on your practice. So what new knowledge did you gain, and how will it help to improve or change your practice immediately? We also said that there was no distinction now between formal and self-directed learning activities. And we had a list of possible learning activities in Appendix B of the CCP guide. So I'm just going to show you, as a reminder, some of the examples of learning activities. So learning on the job at the bedside, you know, learning about a new medication in e-therapeutics, or looking up a disease process in UpToDate. Doing rounds, whether that's client rounds, grand rounds, medical rounds, M&M rounds, doing independent learning. So you're reading journal articles, you're reviewing textbooks or equipment or policy manuals, you're attending in-services or education modules online, like BLS, ACLS, LEADS, LEAN, conflict resolutions, all of those education things that are in your Learn module with your health authority. If you attended a conference, a webinar, a seminar, a workshop, whether they were in person or virtually. If you completed your specialty certification through CNA, if you completed a post-basic degree or completed a program or a course, you completed a diploma or obtained a certificate. And then lastly, it's preparing for preceptorship, mentorship, supervision, teaching, or presenting. So it's the prep work that's associated with that. So I just want to draw your attention to this to clarify what we mean by the prep work, because this is where some people submitted learning activities that were not accepted because it wasn't the prep work. We, in our initial education on the new CCP program, in which you can go back and listen to those on our CCP webpage, we explained that it would not be the whole time that you spent as the preceptor or the mentor. It was the time that you prepared to learn, to gather new information, or to prepare to be that preceptor, that mentor, or to teach a course, or to supervise a student, or to present, a topic. So it was actually, it had to be the preparatory work that you spent gathering, learning to prepare to take on these roles. It was not the time that you were in these roles. Because if you reflect on when you're in these roles, you are the subject matter expert and you are not learning. You're imparting information to your learner. So some reminders for these learning activities for orientation, mentorship, and preceptorship are as follows. You cannot count these multiple times for the same setting if everything is the same and you did not do further prep work or obtain new learning to prepare. So if you are doing acting as a preceptor and you did all of this prep work for one new nurse or new student, and you count this again and you did nothing else, then that would be duplication of a learning activity. Also, you should not indicate you spent 12 hours preparing for a new student or a new nurse orientation just because you were assigned to them for a 12-hour shift. It's the amount of time that you prepared to be that preceptor for 12 hours. We also had someone that submitted that they prepared 740 minutes for a 740-minute preceptorship. Now, unless that individual did spend 740 minutes preparing, then please count that. But you no longer count the time that you acted as that preceptor. It's only the prep work before that preceptorship. So if you spent time over the weekend or during a night shift or on a, during your shift, when it's on your days off, you decided to read articles, review policies, you're looking things up on Mosby's, up to date, you're looking up and reviewing the product manual or the equipment manual for the new IV pumps, you're reading the preceptor manual or, reviewing some of the information that the schools of nursing and faculty of nursing provide you on how to be a preceptor and give, constructive criticism, then all of these count. But you can't count them again if you don't achieve any new learning. So if you're prepping again and you're learning new learning, please count that. But if it's the same impact for multiple of these activities, then the impact statement should be different each time that you say you did prep work for being a preceptor or teaching a course or whatever. For the preceptee who's in orientation, is the time that you spent learning. It's not the time when you're independent, unless you, again, spend time reviewing policies and looking something up. But if you're just going on and doing independent work, then are you learning? So that's what you must reflect on and reflect in the learning impact. So let's talk about the impact statement and where people need improvement. So to have the impact statement to be viewed as complete, then you must have complete sentences. You need to describe what you learned. So what new competencies or knowledge did you gain? And the learning impact statement must state what was the immediate impact of the learning activity. So how immediate did you were going to apply that to your practice? How did that immediately affect your practice by learning this competency or attending this education session? So some examples of incomplete logs your learning description, learning activity description, and your impact statements included, there were one-word impact statements. Now, I'm not sure how we were able to ascertain that you had gain new knowledge or what the impact was on your practice by having one word. So if the learning activity was WMIS, the impact statement read WMIS. Then there was, as I said, that would be a repetition of the learning title, and that was the description of the learning activity. It was not an impact statement. We also had people enter different dates and activities with the same impact. So if you're attending multiple sessions, or you have multiple learning activities, how can they have the same impact? Again, it's a lot of times is how you articulate that in the learning impact statement. So it's really important to reflect on what did you learn and how did that have an impact on your practice. Doing certain learning activities may, but please reflect on each one individually, and hopefully that will allow you to meet the CCP requirements. Now I'm going to give you an example that we took from someone's CCP audit, and this is an example of a good impact statement. Increase understanding of terminology used to refer to Indigenous people. Now able to identify Indigenous groups in Newfoundland. Have heightened awareness how colonialism affected Indigenous people's health and well-being. Increase understanding of how Western and European cultural biases inhibit culturally safe healthcare. Increase knowledge of Indigenous view of health and well-being. Improved understanding of cultural humility and safety, and strategies for the provision of culturally safe Indigenous healthcare for Indigenous people of Newfoundland. Able to incorporate all learnings into my practice, and am now able to provide care that reflects cultural safety and humility. But here's an example of a poor impact statement. Keeping up to date, always good. So here's some no-nos. In your impact statement, people wrote, good to know, good to review, required for work, mandatory every 3 years, required to recertify, necessary to know, new knowledge acquired, as stated above, as per education title, CPR, education day, work-related topics. So as you reflect on these statements, think about, does that tell us what new knowledge or new competencies you gained, and how that had an impact on your practice immediately? So I think you can see that these impact statements require improvement, and they would be considered incomplete. So now we're going to look at step 5, the summative evaluation. And as you had to log your learning activities in MyCCP and do your learning activities, once all of those were completed, though that 24 hours, and you did each of those for each of your learning activities, then when you submitted those, the summative evaluation dropped down, and you had to reflect on the overall impact of the 24 hours of learning. So summative evaluation, step 5, was one of these CCP requirements. And we also gave you in our CCP guide and our presentations a number of questions that you could use to help formulate your summative evaluation. And we're just going to review these. How did completing your learning activity impact your nursing practice overall? How did your practice change after completing the 24 hours of learning? What would be different? And how did the learning activities help you provide safer, more competent, compassionate, or ethical client care? If you're not currently working, how did your learning prepare you to return to your practice setting? And so how did it keep you up to date and current to return to work? So that's kind of a hint on what the summative could be, is that by providing and doing all of that learning, it would keep you up to date and current to return to work. So these are things to help you articulate and what was expected in the summative evaluation. So let's look at the requirements for the summative evaluation. The summative evaluation needed to have complete sentences. It needed to state the overall impact that all of the learning activities add on the nursing practice, on your nursing practice. And it needed to describe how your practice was changed or different. So an incomplete summative evaluation shouldn't have had explanation for errors. So these were incomplete summative evaluations. And what that means is, like, you shouldn't describe why your My CCP portal wasn't working or allowing you to capture learning. So people, described what issues they were having with logging learning into My CCP. It wasn't meant to be a forum for venting, and it wasn't a forum to thank presenters. That's really nice, but that's not a complete summative evaluation. So, just want to draw your attention to those. So again, some no-nos for the summative evaluation. The summative evaluation is not to be used as a forum to address professional practice issues. And people were venting in the summative evaluation. And unfortunately, when we receive comments like this in the summative evaluation, these files could be forwarded to the Director of Professional Conduct Review for review. And professionalism is expected in all encounters with the college, even when you're logging your learning activities in My CCP for last year and in going forward in My Learning in Alinity. We expect professionalism when you enter your comments and your reflections in your CCP. So we want to give you some tips for success. So the 2023 audit is on, has been progressing throughout the summer and fall, and it will continue. We will continue to look at the 2023 audit logs for April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. But moving forward, we want to give you tips for success today so that you now, after completing this presentation, you can go into My Learning in Alinity if you've already started capturing your learning, or if you haven't started, but you are going to go in and update your profile and start logging learning in your learning activities in My Learning in the new Alinity database. We want you to enter them correctly so that you will meet the requirements for licensure year. The program won't stop you if you have made errors in the entering of data. And also, you will have no worries when we evaluate the entries for the 2024. If you put it in correctly now, then you won't be required to submit any additional information with the 2024 audit. When we look at the entries for April 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. One big one that we found this year was that people were not using the correct licensure year. So learning should have been in My Learning in the online CCP portal should have been April 1, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. And I know I've said that quite a bit in this presentation, but it's really important that people are aware that learning occurs during the licensure year. It is not January to December. It is April to March. And as a courtesy, we would appreciate if people didn't have all caps lock on. That was a little bit difficult to read, but only as a courtesy. If that's the only thing that you can do, then that's okay. But it was a really difficult to read when it was all caps lock on. Again, we had issues with people putting in the full hours of whatever time that they spent in preceptorship. So if that was a 6-week preceptorship, people put in a 6-week preceptorship. And as I've discussed earlier in the presentation, it has to be the prep time. You are the subject matter expert when you're teaching, or you're a preceptor, you're acting as a mentor, you're imparting learning to others. So we encourage you to only use the time you spent learning yourself. We also had people that put all of their learning activities in one entry. And then the impact statement was for all of those activities. So there is an exception to that. If you're going to an education day where you're having a variety of speakers, then that's fine. You can list all of those topics that you covered in your education day, Or you can just say you attended the education day for the case room on this particular day. It was a 7-hour day. And here's the learning, the new knowledge I gained when you write in the impact statement. And then you can say what measures you're going to incorporate that immediately in your nursing practice. But the ones that we evaluated, that they just listed all their learning activities, which were not an education day. There were different types of learning activities, and there was only one impact statement. So ideally is that you describe what is the learning activity. If you read an article, you read the ORNAC standards, and then you attended a education session by the rep from Baxter. You reviewed a learning module in Learn. All of those are different learning activities, and you gained different competencies or new knowledge from each of those learning activities. So they should have an individual impact statement as well. There was some duplication of learning. So I want to give you an example. Some individual put down ACLS. It was 2 different dates, not connected in the same year, but it had the same impact statement. So if you're doing an ACLS course, you can write down the 2 individual days and what you learned in each day for, that. Or you could very simply say, it's a 2-day course. You completed it. You did it October 1st and October 2nd. You can say when you completed it is October 2nd. And this is the new knowledge I gained. And this is how the immediate impact is in my practice, going to be in my practice. So it was very confusing when ACLS was different days and not connected, and they had the same impact statement. There's also some confusion about BLS. So my understanding that there's a new program when it comes to learning BLS in the Regional Health Authority, and there's now 3 sessions. So I asked you to reflect on the learning that you're obtaining in those 3 sessions. So my understanding is that you learn about BLS online and you do a practical, and then you can go into the lab 2 extra times, I guess, to ensure that you're proficient in those BLS. So reflect on, in those subsequent sessions when you go in, are you obtaining new learning, or are you just practicing your skills? If there's new learning, absolutely include that. We leave it to you to reflect on what learning you're obtaining. And if it's the same learning activity, the same learning, the same impact, then you should not count that. So, it will depend on the individual learner, but it's for you to tell us what new learning you gained in each of those times. Some more tips for success. Reflect if what you've written down as a learning activity is actually a learning activity. Is it a nursing duty or competency that you're expected to do in your role and not a learning activity? And I'll give you an example. Checking a crash cart. It's a checklist. You have to ensure that all of the medications are there, they're not expired, all of the equipment for Code Blue is there. But what learning are you obtaining while you're checking a crash cart? Okay, if you're looking up meds to say, oh, I'm not familiar with that med, or I forget what that's used for, and you go and you look it up, absolutely use that. But if you're just doing a checklist, that doesn't count as a learning activity. It has to have learning. Attending the Provident 10 retirement sessions. Your learning has to be related to your professional practice for your practice setting. Preparing for retirement is not related to your practice setting. You're not going to learn that knowledge while you're caring for clients or whatever role that you're in. So that really isn't a legitimate learning activity. So I remind you that learning activities must be related to nursing in some manner. It has to be professional nursing practice. So, for example, we had an individual who's a manager of a non-nursing department, facilities, for example, and then did some put in learning activities that was about facilities. So you got to think about it's your nursing practice, not facilities practice. So reflect on that. Does it constitute a learning activity? And if you're unsure, reach out to Kelly and I. Or review the resources that we have on our website, and we're only too glad to help you if you're trying to discern, is that a learning activity? So now I wanted to give you some examples of learning activities. So I wanted to give you some examples of the screenshots of what is a good learning activity description and a good learning impact. So this learning activity, it was completed on April 11th of this year. It was for 5 hours, and again in Alinity and in our CCP, my CCP, it asked, was it nursing related? Was it unique to each other? And was it descriptive? So my activity description, and again, remember, it's minimum 20 characters and maximum 300 characters. So this was the National Council of State Boards of Nursing Virtual Advanced Practice RNs Roundtable. So that was my description. So then I had to say my learning impact. Again, a minimum of 20 characters, a maximum of 1,000 characters. And we had to say, what did you learn and what immediate impact did it have on your practice? So during this roundtable, I learned about the COVID-19 pandemic significantly reshaped our NP practice and that telehealth is being used to provide care in substance use disorders. I also learned about the new core competency framework, which has 6 core competency domains and performance domains. This new knowledge will assist me in my work with NP regulation. In addition, as the lead for NP practice for the college, I need to keep abreast of best practice and track new trends. It will also assist me in my work with assessing IEN applicants' credentials from the United States. So this activity was completed on April 26, 2023. It was 1 hour. And the activity description was Whistleblowing in Nursing, Whistleblowing Canada Research Society. So you'll see that I did not capitalize the S there. It's up to you. But in my Alinity and in your my CCP portal, when you're importing this information, you could go back and make edits. So in Alinity, moving forward, you'll be able to edit your profile and make a change if you wanted to do that. So the learning impact in this example is that in this webinar, I learned that nurses are often left out of decision-making committees, and as a result, nurses may have blind spots that can contribute to increased safety risks. Nurses often experience ridicule and isolation when they whistleblow. I learned about 5 types of wrongdoing and 5 factors that influences nurses' decisions to whistleblow. Even when nurses follow organizational policies and their managers' instructions, they can still experience severe retaliation and discipline. Again, if this was me and I was going back to review my profile, I would capitalize my A. Also, federal and provincial legislation is notoriously weak and ineffective in relation to whistleblowing. The knowledge I gained in this session can be used to assist RNs and NPs during practice calls, especially when there's a professional practice issue. It also keeps me up to date on legislation and case law that I can immediately incorporate into my practice as a nursing consultant. Next learning activity. The completion date was on August 9th. It was for 2 hours. And here I was planning to write a document for nurse practitioners, ending a therapeutic NP client relationship. So I did a literature review. So it was closing a practice or clinic. So I went in and I reviewed the College of Registered Nurses of Manitoba, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Newfoundland's document, and the British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives' duty to provide care. And through this literature review, I learned about the expectations for an MP, physician, or RN closing a practice clinic. The information was the same. It was, how do you close a clinic? The knowledge gained will be used to draft fact sheets and or FAQs in the near future. In addition, I have received an increasing number of practice calls, and I feel more competent in the best practices across Canada and can provide evidence-informed advice to RNs and NPs requesting assistance. I'm addressing an identified need of registrants. This one is for an hour, and this was the CNR International Symposium, Bradley Chisholm and Harry Caden, Regulation for the Future. The learning impact, so it was an hour and a half. So you have to remember, you have to put it in an hour and then 30 minutes. If it was just 1 hour, you would need to put in 1 hour and 0 minutes. In my impact statement, it said, in this session, I learned about compassionate discipline and regulation and changes in regulation in Canada. The knowledge gained can be used this fall for the strategic planning process and for finalizing our strategic plan. So it can be very simple, it can be just a short sentence, or it can be in a short paragraph. It is up to you. Again, a maximum of 1,000 characters. So this session was at the CASN, the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing, in May 30th. It was 10 hours, and it was their biennial Canadian Nursing Education Conference, Anti-Discriminatory Pedagogy in Nursing Education. So in this two-day conference, I learned about critical anti-discriminatory pedagogy in nursing education. The new terms being used now in academia, EDI-AR, and equity deserving students, and now anti-racism is being promoted in nursing education. The need to take a relational approach to education is needed to evaluate the context of where nursing education is taking place, what cultures need to be created. I also learned about the 10 strategies to embed ADP into curriculum, 8 aspects of strength-based nursing and healthcare leadership, genomics, and CAMH's 2023 Health Equity Framework for Education and Training. This conference was important for networking and to learn more about the nursing programs that the college approves. I've taken over as the lead for educational approval, and this conference provided valuable knowledge and concepts to help in this process. Also, the RN ELCs are getting, again, spelling error, and I would go back and edit this, and that opportunity is available to you in my learning. So I put some errors in so that you can see that when you're talking about professionalism, you want things to be, legible and for people to review. So I would go back and edit this and say, are getting close to needing updating, and valuable knowledge was gained to assist in this work. So these are some examples that, even though for me, I work in policy, there are different learning activities that will apply. Doesn't matter to what domain you're in. There's learning activities that you will be able to obtain the necessary continuing competence and learning no matter what your domain is. And some of the criticisms of our old program was that the CCP was hard to apply to other than clinical frontline nursing. So you can see in the other domains, there is many, many learning activities that you can use to obtain your 24 hours of learning. I now want to bring you now to the summative evaluation. So this is from our CCP guide. And as you can tell, those were some of the activities that I have put in my learning, and I wanted to share those to you as examples. I do not have my summative evaluation done because I still have some months before licensure renewal. So I took the summative evaluation from the CCP guide. So here's an example of a summative evaluation where I'm describing the overall impact that all the learning activities had on this clinical educator's nursing practice. So you need to describe how your practice changed and how that learning supported your practice. So this is from the perspective of a clinical educator. By completing my learning activities, I strengthened my knowledge regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, how to care for patients with COVID-19, and the regulatory requirements for engaging in virtual nursing practice or telepractice. As a result, in my role as a care facilitator, I was able to contribute to policy development for my unit, ensuring that there were no barriers to clients receiving care via telepractice, and that the policies met the college's expectations for engaging in virtual nursing practice. I was also able to develop policies that were evidence-informed and was quickly able to adapt and revise the policies as new evidence emerged related to COVID-19. I gained knowledge and skills that enable my role as an educator for the virtual technologies involved in client care. I feel more competent and confident in the skills required for teaching virtual technology and care of the client with vacuum-assisted closure dressings. I'm now more proficient in Cisco Jabber software and the appointment software for booking virtual appointments, and have the skills necessary to impart this knowledge to the nursing staff. Participating in college and CMPS teleconferences prepare me to meet the professional, legislative, and regulatory requirements required to provide safe care and competent and ethical nursing practice, Going forward, when I review or develop new policies and procedures, I will review legislative and regulatory requirements to ensure these requirements are appropriately addressed. My 24 hours of learning has contributed to my professional practice and professional development and improved my leadership skills. I feel more confident as a leader and educator, and has helped me gain insight in what it means to fulfill the self and self-regulation, assume responsibility for my practice, and has provide greater understanding of my accountability as a professional regulated healthcare practitioner. So I'm going to go back to a few tips for success again, because I think I missed a couple there. So I also want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we observed in the summative evaluation. So another tip for success was that you need to avoid one-word sentences or incomplete sentences for the immediate impact. So as I said, we had I showed you some examples of, of the impacts, the summative, that, if the session was WMIS, the impact statement was WMIS, and then the summative evaluation said good presenter. So it really needs to describe, and I'm not sure if you can describe to meet the CCP requirements, and for us as auditors to review and understand that what you learned by doing 24 hours of learning by 1-word or 2-word sentences. It doesn't have to be long. I assure you, it does not have to be all of the paragraphs that I just provided you. I just want to give you some examples of how it could look. And you don't need to repeat the impact of the learning activities in the summative. So one summative evaluation I reviewed, it restated everything they learned for each learning activity. That's not the purpose. We want you to reflect on, nursing is a reflective practice. We want you to reflect on, by doing that 24 hours of learning, what did you learn and how your practice changed and was different because of that learning. How did it make you more of a safe, competent, compassionate, or ethical practitioner? That's what we're looking for. So I'm just going to jump now because we've reviewed these slides. So I just want to remind you, as of July 24th, the college implemented a new database called Alinity. You may have already updated your profile and start logging your learning in My Learning under your profile in Alinity. For those of you who have not started logging your learning or updated your profile in Alinity, the college will be sending out a reminder email for you to start that, and this needs to be done for licensure renewal coming, after Christmas, and is required to be done by March 1st, licensure renewal. Then you will need to do that. Okay, please look in your junk mail, because some people have found that the email has gone into their junk. It did for me. When I got the email on July 24th, mine went in my junk, but working at the regulator, I knew it was coming, so I went into junk and I found it. So please go in and follow the instructions on how to update your profile and start logging your CCP learning activities in My Learning. While the database looks different. Before, you used to go into My CRNNL and go into My CCP online portal. That is now going to be captured in Alinity. Again, as a reminder, the steps are exactly the same. They're just in a different type of database, and they are exactly the same. Okay, the steps are the same. The log looks the same. It's just that you capture it in My Learning in Alinity. I also want to draw your attention to the ways that we connect and that you can connect with the college. Okay, we're going to provide you opportunity for questions now when we finish, but a reminder that we now have social media platforms. You can connect with us through Facebook, Twitter. This is the sign, but I'm sure we need to update that to X. So through Twitter, through X, we have Instagram, we have our recorded education sessions are stored on YouTube, but you can also access our archived education sessions under archived events on our webpage. Our recordings are under archived events under the practice resource page. This is the new location of our new building on Topsail Road, 1033. This is our telephone number, our 1-800 number, and our number to the main line. I will also, if you email us, you'll also see that some of us are using team numbers, so you can call our numbers, our direct number directly. 753 for me is 6174, or you can also use my team number, 709-702-3781. We also have our new website, www.crnnl.ca, but also we connect with you through practice team at CRNNL. So this is the an email address that Kelly and I use to send regulatory and clinical information to you. When you go into Alinity and update your profile, the question is going to be asked, do you want to receive notes from the practice team? So this is a newsletter that we send the first Monday of the month, unless there's a holiday. We send that out the first Monday of the month, and it provides regulatory information for you. There was all types of information about CCP over the last number of months. The trust bursaries and funding is available for registrants up to October 15th. There's a deadline for applications. There's information like that in there. So there's a lot of information from us, but also clinical information. You know, webinars that you can use for CCP. If you read notes from the practice team, it can be used as a learning activity. So please, when you go in to update your profile, please say you'll receive notes from the practice team, and that will help you obtain CCP hours for those who may have some challenges getting your CCP hours for meeting those requirements.
It says, my understanding is that the learning year is required to be submitted by the end of February, but the new year does not start until April. How do you capture all of March? That's a couple questions that has come in. And
yeah.
Another one is, how do you capture learning done in March?
Okay, so since CCP was implemented in 2010, it has always been that learning is between April 1 to March 31st. In 2015, the college implemented a deadline of March 1st. We had a lot of questions last year about the March learning, and with this new Alinity, we are exploring how we can allow registrants to capture their learning after March 1st. So stay tuned. We are hoping to be able to allow individuals to go in and complete their licensure renewal, updating their profile in Alinity and putting in all of those requirements for renewing your license, but then be able to still capture the learning hours up to March 31st. Okay, so we, as I said, we're exploring that. We hope to have that in place. Alinity is being implemented with us in phases, and that phase is being worked on right now. So, so stay tuned. I will keep you updated in notes from the practice team. And as Bradley Walsh, our Director of Registration Services, as he sends out information about licensure renewal, we can hope to have maybe that information in there. But we're hoping that there will be no issues and you can capture your learning up to March. But again, because we've made all of these changes with the new CCP, there's lots of opportunities for you to get your learning before March 1st. Okay.
Is a question, another one about if a series of webinars started in March but finished in April or later, can it be included?
Okay, so this is one of the big changes that happened with the new CCP. Okay, so it is learning up to March 31st. So you put in the learning that you completed up to March 31st. So if you started a program on March 7th, but it wasn't meant to finish until April 31st, then put in the learning that you did from March 7th to March 31st. Okay, and if you're enrolled in a university course and you start a course in January, but you don't write your exam until April, put the learning in that you achieved from January to March 31st, and then tell us what is the new knowledge or competencies you gained, and how was that, what was that impact on your practice immediately? So it's no longer that you had to have successful completion of the whole course. It's when you completed the learning in that licensure year. So I hope that makes it more simplified for RNs and NPs.
And I believe you cover this in quite a bit of detail, but again, the question came early, is how do you log hours for time you mentor a new nurse? And you explained that that was the prep to mentor or preceptor.
Yeah, but let me explain that again. Yeah. So, you know, you're mentoring a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner who's new to a unit. You've been assigned as a mentor, and the NP calls you and says, I don't know much about the criminal code, you know, about medical assistance in dying. And what are the legal requirements? What are the regulatory requirements? And you take, as that mentor, you take time to review the criminal code stipulations. You read, you know, the college document on medical assistance in dying for, you know, the from the College of Registered Nurses. You read the College of Physicians of and Surgeons of Newfoundland and Labrador's document on MAID. You review what information is available from the MAID coordinator for the NLHS Health Authority on what they say, and you read the policy. So you read all of that, and then you have that discussion with the with that NP. So it's all of that prep work that you intake and impart to give that information and discuss that information then as the mentor with the mentee. So it's the prep work. It's not that if you're in a mentorship for 3 months, it's not that 3 months. It's the time you prepare to be the subject matter expert and impart that learning to the mentee.
Okay. The next question, is there an opportunity to have your CCP reviewed with you to see where improvements is needed? I was told I needed improvement, but I don't see where I may have gone wrong.
Okay. Yeah. So as you can imagine, doing 6,000, and now is even more than 6,000. I think it's about 6,500 people. With the old database that we had, once we did the audit, it was done and we couldn't get back in to see the information. This will not be the case with the new Alinity program, but you know, to be able to get access to the information, that has been a barrier, and then to be able to spend time to give 6,000, 6,500 people their individual results. This is a learning year. There is no submissions that are required. So that was the purpose of doing this session, is to give you tips for success so that you can go back this year with your learning that you're logging now or going to log, so that you ensure you put it in correctly. So that's the purpose of today. And I will tell you, on November 7th, I'm going to do another session in the test for Alinity, and I'm going to show you how to log your learning in My Learning in the new Alinity database. So stay tuned for that. But the purpose of today is to give you tips how to complete the steps 3 to 5 and how to complete them correctly.
Another question, Michelle, is this session allowed to be claimed as a learning activity?
Absolutely. You have learned all about the tips on, the audit, and absolutely, you can claim this as a learning activity. Any of the education events that we do at CRNNL can be claimed as a learning hour or learning activity. And if you watch it on archive, remember, we no longer do that distinction between formal and self-directed learning. It is whatever type of learning that applies to your practice setting can be a learning activity.
Is another question. If you attend a 2-day workshop, you have to enter each day separately to capture hours. The impact statement would be the same? That's like a question.
Yeah, no, if you're doing a two-day education session, you completed it on the second day. So you don't have to put in the first day. You can say, I completed it. So I did an education day on October 1st and October 2nd, 14 hours, 2 7-hour days. You put in, you completed October 2nd. So you choose the date of when you completed it, October 2nd. You put in 14 hours, right? And you say, I did an education day for health sciences med-surg unit. Then in your impact statement, you'll tell us the new learning that you gained in that and how you now will apply that to your nursing practice. What was that immediate impact on your nursing practice from what you learned? So you tell us what you learned. Again, you don't have to have long paragraphs. You only have a maximum of 250 words, I believe. Can't remember now exactly, but there's a limit on the number of characters in that impact statement. So tell us briefly what new knowledge or competencies gained and what was the immediate impact. So you don't have to state out each day. You can combine it together as an education day or education workshop.
Okay, the next question, are we able to print our record of learning?
I am not 100% sure in Alinity if you can. We're learning this new program, the same as you. I'm not 100% sure if there's going to be a print function in Alinity, but you certainly can take screenshots of it. So stay tuned. As I said, I can probably, find that out to you, and you can email me or Kelly, at a later date so that we can check that out and get back to you. I'm not 100% sure, and we haven't got all phases in of the database, so we can certainly follow up on that question for you.
And finally, I am currently doing my nursing master's. I am doing 1 course per semester, and I learn things during each course that can impact my work in my department now. Can I use this for my CCP hours? And how would you document the time for something like that?
Well, you only need 24 hours, and most courses, I think, is between 35, 40 hours per semester. It depends on what the curriculum is. You reflect on it. If you started a course in September and then you went to December and then you start another course in January going to March, if you just want to put in 12 hours for each, because it will be longer than 24 hours, you can do that. It's for you to reflect on, what you're going to say, what new competencies you gained, and what was the impact. So you can do one activity, can be all of your hours. For example, I just went to the International Council of Nursing's workshop in Montreal, and it was 5 days. And I could have done all of my learning for that one activity. It was more than 24 hours. But I choose I chose, as you've seen some of the examples that I gave today, to use bits and pieces from each one, because when I had to talk about what was the overall impact of that 24 hours, then I had more options to choose from of how to articulate that. But you can say how you immediately, so if you choose one activity and you get it all done, those 24 hours, say what you learned immediately, but then reflect on, maybe take, a short while, step away from it and say, okay, overall, how did I do doing that learning activity for 24 hours? How did that change my practice, or how did it make it different from me? So you can use one activity or you can use several activities, and you can choose hours from each so that you can reflect on how that had an immediate impact on your practice, and then how did it change your practice overall.
Can you give an example of the impact statement that this learning activity for this learning session, I guess? Can you give an example of the impact statement for this one?
Yeah. For this one. Well, you can say that the immediate impact is that you learned about the results of the CCP audit, the 2023 CCP audit. I learned tips for areas for improvement, and I learned about errors that were made and the immediate impact. Well, I'm going to take this new knowledge gained, and I'm going to be able to go back and review my learning in Alinity and make changes to ensure that I meet CCP requirements for this current licensure year that will allow me to renew my license. And I will feel confident that I will have the requirements done correctly in case I'm audited in the 2024 audit. So again, it's your own reflection, and I'm just throwing this off the top of my head now of how you reword it, but it's for your reflection and to think about what today provided you and how you're going to apply it to your practice immediately.
So for those of us who received a letter stating some areas of concern and require correction, you must attend one of these sessions so that the required corrections will be made for the current year to be successfully proceed to licensure renewal. Do we need to go back into My Learning and make the corrections? I am not clear on the next steps at this point, other than being prepared for next year.
Not what was in the submission for last year. You can't access that. Once it was submitted, that was it. We no longer have that portal. Okay, that database no longer exists. Okay, now you have Alinity. What we want you to do, this is a learning year, right? So while you got an email, there was no submissions to be provided to the college. You didn't have to submit anything to us, right? You didn't even have to call us. It was meant to come to this session, learn where people went wrong, what areas of improvement, so that you can go into Alinity, if you've already put in learning, and look at it and evaluate, do I have to improve what I do, what I have there now? And you can hit the edit button and go in and make those changes. Or if you haven't started capturing your learning in My Learning in Alinity, when you're importing the information now and logging your learning, you'll know how to put it in correctly. And you can always reach out to us, myself or Kelly, to ask for advice of how to import that information into Alinity. We can certainly help you, but again, the steps are exactly the same as when you had to put it in My CCP, in My CRNL, is the exact same. You just find it in a different spot in Alinity. So the requirements are the same, but now's the opportunity. We want to give you the opportunity to go back in, look at what you've put in or what you're going to put in, so that you will meet all of those requirements for the 2024 audit, so that you're not stressing about this, right? You'll know, okay, I attended this session. I'm going to go back and make sure. And I gave you lots of examples of how an impact statement should sound, how a summative evaluation should be written. And we have our CCP guide that you can refer to ensure that you're going to meet the CCP requirements, step 3 to 5, for licensure renewal and to meet the requirements of the CCP audit for 2024.
There's a question there related to the email. When it went out for Alinity, people are just wondering if they need to how far to go back in their junk email, and I believe it was July 24th was the first one that was sent.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but that after you had to action that within a certain amount of days, okay? So we're going to now send, for those of you have not gone in to update your profile in Alinity, we're going to be sending another reminder in the next week or so. I believe registration is sending that. So keep checking your email that's associated with your licensure renewal. So if that's your work email, check your work email. If that's your Hotmail or Yahoo account, go in and check that, and check that it didn't go into your junk mail. Okay. So if you can't find it, or you can reach out to us, we may be able to resend it, but look for that reminder. Again, I really don't have the time to send an email to 7,000 people because we have now 7,000 registrants. So, look for that reminder, and that reminder is going to be sent right up to licensure renewal, because you have to have your CCP and your profile updated in order to do your licensure renewal. So for those, at each time we get ready to send a reminder email, it'll only go to those who haven't updated. So you'll get that email in the next couple of days.
I just created an account for Alinity, so that is all I need to do, and then logged, correct?
Well, if you've gone in and created your account and updated your profile, and you validated with your, so it's a two-factor authentication process. So when you go in and you create your Alinity account, you'll be asked to validate, and they send you a code with the email that is, again, associated with your licensure renewal, and the code comes in, you put that in to validate your account, and then you're in. And so when you go in under Alinity, under your profile, you'll find on the left-hand side going down, it's a box that says My Learning. Click in there, and then you choose the licensure year. And again, please ensure that you're choosing for now to log your learning that it's April 1, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. So check that CCP log and then start logging your learning. And it's the exact same, it looks the exact same as what it did in the old database and online portal. As well, there was a question about where do you update? Again, this is Alinity questions. Stay tuned for November 7th, or reach out to Kelly and I, or registration if you're having issues with Alinity. But first, before you reach out, go to our webpage, and right on the front page, it says, there's a big banner up there saying new, recording management system. Go in there and read all the information about how to set up your Alinity profile, and how to set up that and to be able to start logging. So there's lots of information on our website that you can access about this Alinity database.